Well, hello, Tess. Welcome to the show.
Cheryl, thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun.
I know. Well, as we were talking off air, that just we have such there's this small community. We find that we're connected in other ways somehow, right? Through mutual people that we know. So happy to have you on. And I am so excited to share your story because I was inspired by your story. I actually resonated a lot with your story as far as what you wrote in your book. So I'd like you to actually start with a little bit of your story, but I'm very keen on having you share what prompted such an epic adventure, solo adventure that you went on. What, 7 months, I guess, or so, right? So tell us about that.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, for those of you who are not super familiar with me, my name is Tess Millhollon. I am an author and founder of Her House. And so what happened is I actually went to Australia right after I graduated college. Actually, I spent the first year out of college just like totally lost, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, like a lot of new graduates do. And I ended up selling everything that I had, and I ended up just going overseas and solo backpacking. Um, I mean, a big reason why I went over there was because I felt lost and I didn't know what to do with my next steps in life. But I also went through some hard stuff while I was in college. I went through a sexual assault while I was, in college. And so I was in this place in my life where like I didn't want to be around men. And I was like really scared of men. And I was healing. And I really needed to just get away from everything and really kind of like reclaim myself, reclaim my body, and figure out who I was. And I really felt like solo traveling had a huge part in that process of like me meeting God on the other side of the world, on sailboats, and I won't give too much of away what's in the book, but it was just a really beautiful experience of solo traveling. And that's why I'm really so passionate and so excited to help more women have solo travel experiences too.
I You were very vulnerable with that and sharing why, what prompted sort of this need to, find some healing and finding that across the ocean, like on the other side of the world for you. Um, I wish I had known, and the reason you resonate and I'll be vulnerable, you were vulnerable, I'll be vulnerable, but I was in college, I was raped twice. So I understand, but I wish I had known the magic of behind how much travel could have helped me heal based on my personality too, because I loved to travel even back then. But unfortunately, that's not what I did when that happened to me. So I am so happy you found that avenue. And I know while you were on that journey, you had some very incredible, I like some people call them God winks, or just, you could see God's hand in the different paths, the different things that were happening. Can you share, when you actually experienced that a time or two when you were over in Australia?
Well, I will say that even before I left, I had someone tell me before I left, that I would be always provided a person of peace and that God would continue to bring your person of peace into the journey with you.
Mm.
And I was like, I don't really know what that means, but I'm like, I'll take it. And so over and over again, I found God bringing people into my life to help take care of me along the journey. One of the really big moments for me, and it was actually one of the most inspirational points of my journey that led me to create Her House, was when I was traveling from Brisbane to, or excuse me, I was traveling from Melbourne to Sydney. I was in the airport and I had, my big backpack on. Backpackers are very common in Australia. You see them all over the place. And so I struck up a conversation with a woman behind me. She was there with her kids and they were traveling. And I was like, oh, I like your dress. And she's like, oh, you're traveling. Where are you from? And I was like, oh, I'm American. So we were like just chit-chatting for a while. And then I said, okay, well, I gotta go. And so I started heading over to my gate. And she runs after me in the airport and taps me on the shoulder. And I was like, She's like, I'm so sorry, I don't mean to startle you, but are you going to Queensland sometime soon? And I was like, well, yeah, I'm sure I will go to Queensland. I'm going to Sydney right now, but it's my plan to, head up the coast at some point. And she's like, well, my parents live in Queensland and I'm sure they would love to host you. And like
Mhm.
that moment just like it took me back and I was just like, what? Like your parents would want to host me like a complete stranger? And she's like, "Well, you remind me of my sister." And
Mm,
she um solo backpacked through Europe and she was always so scared of
mm.
where she was going to stay in her accommodation. And she's like, this is just my way of paying it forward because
Oh,
you remind me of her."
oh,
And I was like, wow, okay. So she's like, here's my email. If you need a place to stay in Queensland, reach out. And I was like, okay. So I kept her contact info. A few weeks later, I was in Brisbane, didn't know what my next step was going to be. I ended up reaching out to her and I ended up staying with her parents, Fran and Alan, down in the Coolangatta area just south of Surfers Paradise, for about a week. They hosted me for a whole week. And it was such a beautiful experience that, like, God, just brings people into your
yes.
life. Like, especially as a solo woman traveler, I
Mhm.
think that solo women they like people just come out of the woodwork to help you and support you. And it was like such a beautiful experience to be hosted by complete strangers. And it was really one of the most inspirational points that helped me really inspire me to create her house.
Yes, yes. I know that's important, just in general, the whole safety thing and where you stay plays a huge part into that. 'Cause sometimes I know I run into the fact where, I try to book something online and, maybe it's not in the greatest place, right? And, you know, or you gotta share if you're in a hostel, you gotta share, a bunk bed room with other people that you don't know. And, it can be a little unnerving. So it's amazing that you found people along the way that reached out to you and helped you in that avenue. And that, we'll talk a little bit more maybe at the end, but I really truly love your concept for her house. And we'll talk about that a little later. But definitely is a need out there for us women solo travelers for sure. I want to talk just a little bit about too. What I found very amazing is without experience and without you know, telling the whole story, but you did spend some time on boats while you were over there. And I don't have any experience with boat. I don't think you did either before you did this. So how did that, well, I guess, how did you learn because I know you were actually having to do a lot of the work on the boat. You weren't just a passenger, you were actually doing some of the manual labor. I mean, how did you learn all that while you were there?
So how it came up, so I was
Yeah.
actually living in the Gold Coast. I had a working holiday visa, so I could I could work legally and earn
Okay.
money in Australia while
That's
I
good
was
to
over
know.
there.
Yeah, I was wondering that too.
Yeah, I had a special visa that allowed me to do that. So I was actually bartending. I was bartending at a five-star restaurant in the Gold Coast, and I got a flat. So I was like creating a whole new life in Australia, and it was like amazing, and I loved it. But the thing is that I remember this one day I was like walking to the grocery store because I didn't have a car or anything. So I was like walking to the grocery store, and I was like, okay, I get up at like 11, 12, and I hang out for a little bit. I go to the restaurant and I bartend all night and I go to bed at like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I was just like, this is exactly what I was doing in Texas. But I'm
Yeah.
doing I'm like living the exact same life that
Hmm.
I was living in Texas and Australia. And I'm like, what am I doing? And that's when it like really hit me that I was like, I came to the other side of the world to live the exact same life that I was living in Texas. I'm like, no, I need to do something like totally different. And so before I had gotten that flat, I was living in hostels for a while.
Mm.
Like when I
Mhm.
wasn't like staying with hosts and stuff, I was like living in hostels here and there. And a lot of times they'll have like job boards on hostels because backpackers are
Right.
always
Right.
work. And it said, I saw one that said yacht crew wanted no experience necessary. So I
No
was like, oh, that's
experience.
that sounds cool, right? So I take the number and I keep it in my backpack and I kept it. I happen to still have this number. And so I call this guy and he's like, "Yeah, we're heading." And it's just this dude. It's this old guy who is what they need to do is they need to take their yachts from the Gold Coast area up to Airlie Beach. So, like, because of their cyclone season, so they're needing to take all of their
Uh,
yachts up north for the
okay.
cyclone season.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, well, we're leaving to head north, like around the end of May. So if you want to come, uh, you know, let's go. So I went out to go see his boat, and it's a 35-foot monohull, so it's technically a yacht, but it's not like a mega yacht or anything like that. They're like s smaller yachts and stuff that have, like, of course, like sleeping quarters and stuff like
Right.
underneath and stuff. And so I had a few lessons with him. He took me out and taught me how to turn the yacht and how to do stuff. I can't remember now. It's been so long since I like I knew all those terms, like what every all the ropes were called and stuff like that, but he kind of like taught me how to do it. And then
Um,
it was me, him, and then another Australian woman, and we just sa started sailing, and I stayed on their yacht for about 2 weeks, and then I started yacht hopping. So
yeah. Yeah.
I call it extreme hitchhiking. Like I would never
That's
hitch
yeah.
like but I like ended up getting on yachts with people. I'm like, this is substantially more dangerous than getting in a car with people, I
I
feel
mean,
like.
when I was reading your book about that, I was like, holy cow. Like, I just, I couldn't imagine doing that. Honestly, I think that was so courageous. I mean, and I like how you came to the realization that, hey, I want to do something completely different than what I was doing back in the States. And why not, right? You were trying to create this new life, so to speak, or just, this new experience for yourself, right? Get yourself out of that comfort zone because bartending was comfortable for you, right? Because you've done it before, right? So here's something completely new. And I'll be completely honest, I don't think maybe when I was in my 20s when like you were, but I'm in my 50s and I don't, I feel like there's many of us that are older that I'm not saying there aren't older ladies out there that wouldn't jump on that type of opportunity where you have to learn a new skill, which I think is admirable, really. I mean, that is a huge, huge thing. But that's quite an adventure. I mean, that's huge to actually learn something completely new and like you said, do some dangerous hitchhiking.
You know,
But
it's crazy.
it was exciting though, right? Wasn't it exciting?
It was so exciting, just like the adventure of a
Yeah.
lifetime. And I really, um, I was telling when I was like working at the bar, and I was like, oh yeah, so I'm gonna go sail up to the Whitsunday Islands, like just like nonchalantly. And they like stopped and like, do you know that Aussies like go their whole lives wanting to do this and never doing this. Like what you're doing is like a once in a lifetime opportunity. And so because I
Hmm.
really like thought about just like staying and because I was finally like getting money again and having some stability. But I think like what I really learned from that is like when opportunities present themselves, you have to go for it because otherwise like these opportunities may pass you by and you'll never get them again. So yeah, that's probably my biggest takeaway from it
I
is
agree.
just go for
Yes.
it. Yeah.
And like you said, the area that you were cruising or, yachting, I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, like you said, I mean, that is going on that type of trip is a trip of a lifetime, honestly. And I'm just a little jealous that you did it. So you did that for a while, and I know that you came to a point where, well, your original goal was to be gone a whole year, correct?
Yeah,
And I know
right.
you
Yep.
you
I had a
got
year-long visa.
year-long visa, but I think you got to a point where you discovered that it was time. Tell us a little bit about how that came about and really, how you knew it was the right time to leave, you know?
Yeah. Cheryl, it's interesting because like when you're long-term solo traveling, like what I did, like you'll get homesick and really
Mhm.
uncomfortable like all throughout the journey. And you'll go through days when you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to go home and I want to go where like things are comfortable again. And because you're obviously like completely out of your comfort zone for an extended period of time, and it can be like a lot on you like mentally and physically.
On a daily
Um,
basis too.
it
Yeah.
is. It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like if you deal with homesickness, like that's totally normal, like when you're solo traveling.
Hmm.
And I would go through like bouts of it and then it would kind of go away. And then I would like start to feel better again and excited about the journey again. But what happened during like those weeks leading up to me finally making that decision to stop my trip early is that sensation of like I I feel like I'm done. Like this season is
Hmm.
closing. And I remember I was at the marina in Airlie Beach, just like watching the boats and watching these people with their family, and I just like continued to feel alone. And it was like a switch like flipped in my head. I was like done. I was done. Like I didn't have this like longing, needing to leave and to adventure. Like I was ready to go home. And so that kind of happened. And then I went out cruising for a little bit longer after that happened, and it just never went away. I was just like ready to go home. And a lot of it had to do with well, he was my boyfriend at the time, but my now husband, like is it's a love story in the end of it.
Yeah.
Like my book is a love story too. And I was just like ready, ready to go home and ready to be with him. So I think it's just something that happens in your heart, like you'll know in your heart when it's time to go home, and it feels different from just being homesick. It's hard
Hmm.
to explain.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Like, well, would you say you definitely had a piece about your decision to go home?
Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
felt I felt like ready to just head home. And I
Yeah.
didn't feel the gnawing need to leave. Because like before I had that epiphany, before I had that experience, I just had this desire to leave and to go somewhere and just to adventure, and that's all I cared about. And that's just like where I was at, just in my
Hmm.
journey and in my
Hmm.
life. And then all of a sudden it stopped, and I
Well,
was like ready to go.
I like how
Mhm.
you also gave yourself grace that you weren't being so hard on yourself that, oh my gosh, I committed to a year and now I'm like not making the year. And, like we set these goals
Mm.
and we can, hold ourselves to them maybe not in the right way, meaning that, you know, it's all for the wrong reasons, I should say, right? But it sounds like you gave yourself that grace and you had a piece about finishing, being done a little earlier than you had anticipated. So I think that's also just part of of travel in general, just, making sure that you are flexible and you are, you know, like you said, following the adventure maybe or knowing when it's time to leave or time to move on to another place. So I appreciate that
Yeah.
insight there. How did you
Yeah,
yeah, go
yeah, go
ahead.
ahead. No, I was just gonna say, like, I think that, like, as a solo traveler, you really get to know yourself on a deeper level than you ever have before in your life. And so you really get to know what you truly want in your heart, and you know how to decipher it, and you get really good at making decisions. Because before I went to solo travel, I always felt like I needed to ask everyone's opinion in order to make a decision, right? I would ask my mom, my dad, my boyfriend, my brother, I would ask people what they thought. And I went through things, and I talk about this in my book, how there are things that I was going through that no one else could understand. Like
Mhm.
when I was like getting on different yachts, and I like was trying to explain the situation, but the thing is like no one could give me insight on what to do. No
Right.
one had done what I'd done. No
Mhm.
one had felt what I felt. No one has seen what I seen. Like I had to be able to make this decision. And I think having that ability has served me so much beyond that specific trip. Like being able to make your own decisions, know in your heart what you want, and then be able to go for it, has served me tremendously throughout my uh, professional life, even.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I totally agree. And I think, like you said, solo travel, it really gives you those kind of those skills, I should say, right? To, like you said, understand yourself, make decisions, be self-reliant. I mean, all these things that can, like you said, carry over into everyday life. So absolutely. That's why I'm a big encourager, advocate of solo travel, because there's so much you can, like you said, you can learn about yourself while you are solo traveling. How did you handle the homesickness and the loneliness? What were some things that you did to combat that while you were gone?
Mm. So I think that as I was solo traveling, I needed to anchor myself in some kind of comfort because
Mm,
dis or you're uncomfortable like all the time,
yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So there's a couple things that I actually carried with me while I was solo traveling. One of them was a pair a pair of like fuzzy socks with like grippies on the bottom of them,
Okay.
that acted kind of like slippers. And I would wear them like in my hostel, in my host home. I would wear them, it was something that was able to give me comfort
Hmm.
when I felt so far away from home.
Yeah.
Um, Another thing that I carried with me when I was um, living in the Gold Coast, I had gotten, a flat and I got sheets for a bed. And I remember when I was about to leave and go sailing, I had to leave the sheets behind and I literally like broke down before like I was like holding these sheets and like hugging these like sheets because they're like really soft, like they were like
Oh,
flannel sheets. They were
yeah.
like
Yeah.
super
I
warm
love
and,
flannel
and soft.
sheets.
I love flannel sheets. And I was just like I was like crying because I didn't want to leave my sheets. I was like, I come all the way to the other side of the world. I've left my boyfriend and my parents and everything in my whole life, and this is my breaking point. Like sheets, like what in the world? And I think it was just like it gave me comfort
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
was so uncomfortable
Hmm.
for so long. And so what I did is I kept my pillowcase.
Hmm.
So I brought that pillowcase with me like on the boats and
Yeah.
I think I don't know if I might still even
Still
have
have
that
it.
pillowcase today, because I think that we need to like have these little items of comfort like
Hmm.
while we're so far away from home that we can like hold and find, yeah, just like find comfort in. I think that having something like that is really, really good, like items to carry that are not like heavy
I
carrying
agree.
item.
I mean,
Yeah.
I get the sheet thing because I do a lot of house sitting and I actually take my own sheets with me.
Do you?
It's just, I like my sheets. Like just want to know that I'm going to be comfortable when I sleep. So I get that. But I have heard from other mostly nomads, people that are long-term traveling and they might be somewhere, a few months here, a few months there, that they do the same thing. They have their comfort items that whatever it may be for them, that they bring with them, whether it's like a picture frame or a trinket or something that just makes them feel more connected to home. And I love that. So no judgment. I think that's a great idea, actually. So if someone is, considering some of that long term travel, take some sort of comfort from home with you. I love that. What about some other tips maybe for solo women travelers? I know there's a lot, I'm sure you have a lot that you could share, but what would be one golden nugget that would apply to, I guess, any age of a solo women traveler? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think solo traveling spans all generations.
Hmm.
I know we have ladies in her house that are in their 20s like me, but then we have like retirees like 60 plus who are, empty nesters or widows and they
Yeah.
are ready. They want to continue living life. And so it spans all generations. I think one of the really magical things and tips that I have for women who are wanting to solo travel is to somehow find community in
Mm,
like upcoming locations before you get there. And that's like what we're building inside of her house is to help facilitate those types of connections so that you can have friends, hopefully have hosts in the upcoming city or, country of wherever you're going. So you have not only like potentially a safe place to stay, but you
mhm.
have a friend who can probably introduce you to her network, and then you can continue to, start networking and finding friends throughout the area because being able to connect with locals is a really, really special way to solo travel. You're able to really immerse yourself in a
Mhm.
culture
Mhm.
that like you can't get staying in a hotel.
Right.
You just can't
Right.
get that fully. So like, and I know that the majority of ladies who are in her house and who want to connect with others, they want that type of immersive um solo travel experience. So that's one thing that I would really recommend doing, whether you do it in her house or if you just like work within your, like your personal network, do everything you can to like find people in the new
Yeah.
country.
Well,
Mhm.
and like you said, I think that also prevents solo travelers from feeling lonely, or finding themselves sitting in their hotel at night with nothing to do, right? So it's a great way. I like that you specifically said to connect before you go, because I think that's been the downfall I've tried to do is to do it once I've gotten there. And I can say probably haven't been as successful as if I probably had done some pre-work, before I got to my destination on trying to find communities before I got there. So, out of your travels with this long-term trip you did to Australia came this idea of her house. And so, you just talked a little bit about what you guys do. If you want to share a little bit more, and then I know you have an app coming out for it, or is kind of out in beta testing, right? But go ahead, share about it. I'm excited because I love the
Yeah.
idea.
No, it's so exciting, Cheryl. So what it's called Her House, all one word, Her House. And we bring solo women travelers together so that we can host each other and find free accommodation all over the world. And so it's more than just finding free accommodation. It's really a
Mm.
community of women who get it. They understand your desire to solo travel and they want to encourage you on your journey. A lot of women, some women can host in her house, some women can't, but I know a lot of them are really excited to meet each other. Like that's the whole point, we want to meet each other and foster relationships. And so then you're like, oh, I have this friend, like I have this friend in Japan. I have this friend in,
Yeah.
you know, Florida who like, we get along and she's going to come visit me or I'm going to go visit her. And I think like that's really the point of it all. Like
Mhm.
sometimes we have ladies come in who are wanting hosts in specific locations and maybe we don't have them in that exact location yet, but we are growing. And currently, we do have an app in the App Store that I actually built personally with no code
Amazing.
software. It's a little rough, but it has
It
work. It does work. It is
works.
a functioning app. It's just not fabulous. Um, but we have we have actually acquired, or we have a new investor, and we are now building the app professionally. And so that is going to be released
Yay.
like mid-July. And so we're really excited about that. And it's going to make like connecting with other women throughout the whole world easier than ever, connecting on different likes. Like if you like someone, or if someone is into hiking and kayaking or
Hmm.
going to antique stores or something like that, it's going to help facilitate those connections so that you can start like developing friendships and then going and visiting and staying with each other.
And you forgot to mention, because I know safety is a bit of a concern for women, that part of your process for her house, which I really appreciate, is that you will background check people to make sure. So I think that's a great, security measure for people that maybe, want to make sure who they're staying with, they're going to feel safe there. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, we
yeah.
have background checks for all members inside of her house,
Okay.
whether, you're a host or a traveler. If you're a member in her house, then you'll have a background check. So you can feel comfortable if someone reaches out to you in the her house community, um, you know that she's been background checked and
Yeah.
verified. So that
Yeah.
always makes us feel a lot better because I know
Yes.
we're all scared. I mean, it's like a reoccurring theme that we're all like
Yes.
nervous about solo traveling. And so
Right.
us all coming together, I think will continue to help keep us safer. Mhm.
I agree. I agree. And I love the community aspect of it. So it's not just because there are some other whether it's Facebook communities or things like that, that people, like host a sister kind of thing, but they're not vetted. And typically, those kind of setups, they're not, besides not being vetted, it's mostly, it's not about community because it's just like, I just want a free place to stay kind of idea is usually what I'm sensing from those groups. So I love the community idea. And I mean, I would love it because when I get to a place, I don't know the place like that person does that lives there. And they have some hidden gems in their back pocket, I'm sure, or less known places that they can, expose you to as a traveler. So I do love that. And I'll keep helping you plug it here as best I can. But you also have, if you want to hear the rest of Tessa's story, she did write a book about it. Her hitchhiking through
I
yacht.
know my extreme hitchhiking.
Um, so you can get that on Amazon. It's called Sherbet Skies, and it's available on Amazon. That's where I got mine copy. So I'm sure it's
Indeed.
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I am needing to record it for Audible. I've just had so much on my plate with the business, but that is on my list
Oh,
to
okay.
get it recorded for Audible at
That
some
would
point.
be fun because I love Audible books, when I'm driving and stuff like that. But still, it
Mhm.
was a wonderful read. So I didn't have a hard time reading it. But I'm an avid reader. So
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for
yes.
those kind words. It was such a joy to write, and I hope that people that
Hmm.
do read my book like can really feel that. Like it wasn't a hard process for me. It was literally a joy to write that book and to relive the days of like sailing up the Australian coastline. And that I hope it, inspires you and excites you and helps you meet God in a new way that
Yes.
that God's going to meet you on your journey. And like, no matter how far you go, like, you could be like on a boat in the middle of the ocean and like he's going to meet you there and like it's going to be great. So, that's something that I really learned in the process.
Yes. I love that
Yeah.
because he is everywhere. So, and I love that he
Yeah,
was guiding you along the way too. So that's really inspirational.
definitely.
Well, Tess, it's been a pleasure, and I can feel that we're probably going to connect again at some point in the future. And like you said, we got this small community travel. We'll find each other again. But I appreciate you being here and all the inspiration you have provided, and your amazing app that's coming out, Her House. So we'll keep tabs on that. And thank you again for your time. I loved it.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. I really appreciate it. You guys have a good one.
Bye.